Here we go back again with another episode of the Around the Show Sports Podcast. As always, I am your host, Kyle Showalter, and tonight I'm joined once again by the full crew. We got Brandon Mills on the left. We got Christian Hausfeld on the right. Christian, we missed you last week. Glad to have you back, buddy. You guys, how we doing tonight?
Doing great.
Doing well.
I mean, I don't think there's any reason for us to delay this. It's great to have you back. Thanks. Let's just jump right into it. Yeah, obviously, it's been a loud past 24 hours in the sports world. As of the time of us recording this,
gotta love it.
It is March 9th, Wednesday, at about 5:30 p.m. There's been no deal made on the CBA. MLB has canceled another series of games. We're going to go ahead and take a week off of that like the owners took 41 days off of negotiating. Just go ahead and push over to the NFL news. And boys, Russell Wilson is a Denver Bronco.
Bang! That's huge, man.
It's the biggest move we've seen at one of these positions in years. I can't remember the last time a quarterback of this caliber has moved.
George Patton did a great job landing him. He's still got some good years of Russ left, assuming he stays healthy. I'm excited to see what he can do. I mean, the AFC West looks absolutely amazing. That's going to be some fun football to watch.
Yeah, the details of the trade before we go any further, Russell Wilson and a fifth-round pick was sent along Russell Wilson, a fourth-round pick was sent along with to Denver for 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a fifth-round pick. Yeah. And then also a young, controllable quarterback in a rookie deal, a great young tight end, and then also Shelby Harris. I mean, it's an incredible haul for an incredible quarterback. It really feels like a win-win, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say so. Besides the quarterback situation, we're going to see what Seattle's going to do about that now. But that's not what I'm focused on. I'm happy for Russ. I'm happy he's out of the NFC West for one. Let's get that clear.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's moving on. I guess you can kind of tell he wanted out towards the end there. I thought he was going to stay. I thought they were going to make something happen in Seattle, but good for him, man. I wish him luck.
Yeah, it's definitely more so want to focus on the Denver side just because Seattle sucks. They were bad last year with Russ. They're going to be worse without him, but moving forward with them, they're going to probably do one more year with Pete Carroll and then move on from him. Schneider, the GM there, I think he has gotten assurances, or he wouldn't have traded Russ away, that he's going to be the guy who gets to stay there and rebuild that whole organization. But definitely the more interesting, at least short-term perspective that we want to look at is definitely going to be Denver. That is a team, man.
Yeah.
We've been saying it for the last 2 off seasons. Last year, is Aaron going to go there? This offseason, it was, is Aaron going to go there? They ended up getting Russ, which they said was their primary target all along, which I don't buy one bit.
No.
When Aaron Rodgers is available and Russell Wilson's available, you go with Aaron Rodgers. But hey, you got a 33-year-old quarterback. He's expensive, but he's great. And he's won a Super Bowl, never had an MVP vote, but he's played at that level for spurts of his career. It's hard to look at this any other way, despite how much they gave up as a win for the Broncos, who have been looking for this guy for such a long time. They've had the defense. They have the young stud running back in Javonte Williams. That wide receiver room is unbelievable with Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick. I mean, there's and obviously Jerry Jeudy, the first-round pick from 2 years ago, who we haven't seen much of just because of injuries. So much talent on that team. And to add Russell Wilson in that environment also, we got to talk about Mile High City with Denver. Russell Wilson, the best deep ball thrower in the league.
Good for them, too.
It's a beautiful thing,
all the Broncos fans that are staying down for their team, that's a win for them right now. So happy for them. They have the opportunity to have a real dynamic offense down in Denver. And we'll see how it goes. Like I said, assuming Russ stays healthy. We saw him deal with some injuries last season. And you saw how Seattle performed in the season as a whole. But yeah, I'm excited for Denver. I'm excited to see if they can shake up the AFC West anymore.
I thought it was kind of funny the way the news kind of broke because it's March 8th. So when I think of March 8th, as in yesterday, when I think of the beginning of March, I think of March Madness. And here we are, beginning of March, getting massive, massive football news. And then, so it starts off with Aaron Rodgers officially committing to the Packers. And then the whole kind of year or / last year, it was kind of rumored, Rodgers to the Broncos. And so with not even 2 hours goes by, and then the Broncos are like, oh yeah, we traded for Russell Wilson. It's like, oh yeah, we wanted him the whole time. It's like, so it's
sure. Just the second Aaron Rodgers gets off the board, you trade for the other guy, but you wanted him the whole time.
It's like a vindictive girlfriend where you're fighting, and then they post on Twitter, and you're like, oh, what the? Yeah, I was mad about the whole time. It's like, okay.
Yeah, it's I want to go ahead and pivot to the AFC West, which Brandon brought up very, very shortly, that division is going to be unbelievable. Talk about 4 heavyweight teams. The Raiders made the playoffs last year. They're probably the worst team in the division at this point, just based off who they have at quarterback compared to those other 3 teams. The Chargers are one bad play away from winning every single week. The Chiefs are the Chiefs. And now the Broncos have Russell Wilson to go along with that supporting cast, who were still a very tough team to beat last year with subpar quarterback play through 17 weeks. Yeah. That division's going to be a dogfight, man.
Arguably the best division in football right now.
I would say it went from the NFC West to the AFC West with one quarterback. It's hard to argue against it. I mean, the worst quarterback in that division is Derek Carr, and he's
it's crazy
12th or 13th best quarterback in the league. I mean, you're not going to put him in the back half of quarterbacks, no matter how much of a hater you are towards Derek Carr. I'm a big Derek Carr believer personally. I think he's a solid to above average quarterback. But I think putting him anywhere below that 12-13 range is where you start to talk a little crazy. If you got 4 top 12 quarterbacks in the division, holy shit, man! Like it's crazy to think the difference between like the NFC East and that quarterback situation over there, where really the only truly established guy is Dak Prescott, versus the AFC West has 4 established veteran quarterbacks. 3 of them look like they're have a Hall of Fame trajectory career going, and the 4th one is a above average starter. It's nuts what they got going on over there on the West Coast.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be so fun to watch, man. I want football season to start right now.
So I also thought it was kind of interesting to point out how it seems like this offseason for quarterbacks, how it's shaping up to be. It just shows how important and imperative getting that difference maker at the quarterback position is. Maybe it's an insight to possibly what the quarterback prospects look like coming out of the draft, where teams are just like, we can't afford to miss our window. And it feels like the Broncos window is wide open, and getting a quarterback like Russell Wilson, I mean, it really puts a statement on what they want to do and where they hope they can hopefully go.
Yeah. I think you look back at last year, just on that note that you were talking about, with the draft, the Broncos very notoriously passed on Justin Fields with the 9th overall pick last year and took Surtain, who ended up being great, and it obviously ends up working out for them because they end up with that franchise quarterback, but it did end up costing them a lot more than it would have been if they would have just maybe taken a gamble on one of those guys. But in the grand scheme of things, with the roster and the position they were in, this route makes a lot more sense, at least in my opinion. You go get the established guy, you have a lot of people on controllable deals, a lot of very good players on those controllable deals. So you lock down the quarterback, forfeit the draft picks, you already have the surrounding cast, go out 3-year window, try to win some Super Bowls. It's easy to look at those picks and be like, oh, what if we draft this guy or what if we draft that guy? And it turns out to be an all-pro. But when you have the ability to bring in a guy,
you do it.
Not just an average quarterback, a good quarterback, but a guy. Russell Wilson is a Super Bowl champion. He's going to be an NFL Hall of Famer at the end of his career. I think he has the 2nd most pass yards through his first 10 seasons in the history of the league, behind Peyton Manning, I think was the stat I heard earlier today. Just a bonkers level quarterback, a guy that you do everything in your power to draft and get in the room. You go out, you get him for a couple of picks, and you move on. The question I want to pose to you guys and let you guys kind of take the reins on this, in the AFC powerhouse picture, where does this put the Broncos? Are they up there in the upper echelon with the Chiefs and the Bills? Or are they that tier below where you got teams like the Ravens and the Steelers if they get a quarterback? I'm curious what you guys think.
I'm going to put them at tier 2. So I might even put the Ravens up at the tier 1 right now. But it's all going to depend. I mean, I got to see it in action first. It's fun to talk about. It's fun, to have Russ in your city, but we got to see it done first. I'm not ready to put him as a top caliber team yet, but I mean, you can't get any worse at quarterback than what you were last season. So it's definitely a major improvement, and look for them to win some games.
I think only time will tell, but I don't see how you can put them ahead of some of the other AFC teams. Chargers are up and coming. Chiefs are going to be Chiefs. Bills are up and coming. You have a lot of good AFC teams. Ravens, I would put those still ahead of the Broncos, but you're at least now in the conversation. As of like last year, I mean, they had a good roster, but I mean, they were just missing that quarterback, and you can only go so far, with subpar quarterback play, and then the playoffs come, and it's like you gotta you got to have that position.
Yeah, you really got to catch lightning in a bottle if you're going to have success at the highest level late in the year without a quarterback. You think of a team like the Ravens back when they won with Joe Flacco. They had that incredible defense, and they just kind of made it happen. The Legion of Boom had Russ. They had a great defense, but they had Russ. It seems like a lot of these times when you look at the overarching theme of these teams that are consistently competing for championships and aren't just one-off champions like those Ravens were, it's that consistent great quarterback play. Not through spurts where it's good one week, bad the next week, kind of like a Ryan Fitzpatrick or a Carson Wentz type of player. Getting Russell Wilson, you're getting a bane of consistency. The problem is late in the season, Russ tends to die off just a little bit. The last 2 years, it's been especially egregious with that. These last 2 years, if I had a drink every time I heard somebody say Russell Wilson never got an MVP vote, and this was going to be the year, I would have been hammered by week 3 both years. It's been really brutal to watch the second half of the last 2 seasons. So that's really my only cause for concern. But I think I'd agree probably in that second tier is where I'd put those guys along with like the Bengals. I'd say the Ravens are still in that tier unless they prove they can stay healthy a little bit longer and win some more games. Even though the injuries are the main thing with the Ravens that I think that holds them back. A team like the Steelers I think fits in that tier. I think the Broncos fit comfortably with them. But if they come out in weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, and are just firing on all cylinders, unless Russ falls off a cliff and we can expect that to continue, I think it's going to be hard to not seriously start talking about them as Super Bowl favorites or at least contenders.
I have a question for both of you guys as I was kind of thinking about this whole process. Last year, the Rams went all out and went and got their guy in Stafford, mortgages the future with their draft picks. And then it's not as, I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the Rams gave up more to get Stafford, correct?
They gave up 3 first and offloaded Jared Goff's contract.
Still, I feel like the question I had for you guys is, do you feel like this is the new norm where quarterbacks are...
The Rams also have the best defensive player in the league on their team. They had a pretty sound defense and they're pretty established there, so it was probably easier of a decision to let go of what they had at the time.
Yeah,
I think.
I can't remember, at least in the recent history of at least a top 10 quarterback trading or getting traded, prior to the season beginning. And do you think this is kind of the new norm that the Rams kind of set in motion where it's like, okay, who cares about the draft picks? They may or may not work, but we are going to get a guy that we know works. Do you guys feel like this is the new normal going forward?
I definitely think, depending on the team, the organization, or the organizational philosophy, that could definitely be a thing. The Rams don't give a shit about draft picks. They've made that very obvious. So I think a team like that, where they have an aggressive GM, a head coach who doesn't care about any of that stuff, doesn't care about the future, they want to win now, I think those teams are going to be more than happy. And I think the big market teams that are going to spend a lot of money in free agency are probably going to be the guys who most veer towards that strategy, even though the big market versus small market thing isn't the biggest deal in the NFL. The aggressive GMs are going to trade those guys are going to be the same guys who are aggressive and go out and sign these guys to big money deals. If you're willing to bet on yourself in trade, you'll bet on yourself in the free agent market. That's the kind of rationale there. But I don't know. It's a hard thing to ask because when you trade away those draft picks, your bread and butter, what gets you job security as an NFL GM is getting a quarterback in the building and drafting well. And then obviously making sure that those draft picks stay on the team through realistic contract extensions that aren't going to bankrupt the organization or bloat your cap number up or anything like that, even though we know the cap doesn't actually matter at all based on what's happened with Aaron Rodgers. But I'm sure that's a topic we'll dig into at another time. But it's hard for me to say this is going to be the new normal because I think it's so circumstantial, but I definitely think it's something that we're going to see more of, especially in this new era of quarterback and player empowerment overall in all sports. But really the NFL, it's really just start to set in where these quarterbacks are kind of taking ownership and saying, you know what, maybe the grass is greener somewhere else and I'm willing to take that chance and bet on myself. And we've seen a lot more guys do that. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers was seriously contemplating that for 2 straight years. Matthew Stafford and now Russell Wilson, who's going to be the next guy. And Kyler Murray is starting to do that as well. You missed out on the Kyler Murray talk last week. We had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah.
What do you think, Brandon?
I'll just cap on what he said. I agree with pretty much everything he said. I think it can be, a style that's adapted throughout the league, but I don't think it's, going to be everyone's go-to move just because everyone else is doing it. I think you kind of got to be in the situation, and it depends on who you are as the guy in the building. Are you aggressive? Do you want to do those types of things? Then, like you said, it all just depends on who you are and where you're at.
And speaking of aggressive, I'm going to pivot to something else. We're going to go ahead and move the direction over into the NBA. And this kid, Ja Morant, man, the epitome of aggressive.
It's a real deal.
That Grizzlies team has been a ton of fun to watch this year for anybody who's been following the NBA. Their meteoric rise this year from a good team into potentially what is a great team that's looking to make some noise in the playoffs has been a little bit shocking. And the Grizzlies, for my entire life, at least the majority of it, have kind of been an afterthought in the NBA. Historically, they've had some really good teams, but outside of 2012, 2013, I can't think of a year where they were in a good, like a legitimately good or great team. I could find years where they were average, where they weren't super bad. But this year is the first year of my life where I really feel like I'm watching a Grizzlies team that can compete for a championship. At least on the surface level, that's what it looks like. And I'm curious to see what you guys think if these Grizzlies, as Christian mentioned before the show, a great quote from JJ Redick, is this he was talking about the Bulls, but I think it fits here as well. Are the Grizzlies a great story or are they a great team? And I'll go ahead and kick it to you guys and let you guys get the first thoughts in there.
I'm asking myself the same thing. You know, I can't really wrap my head around who they are and what they are. I know the record speaks for itself, about 20-plus games over 500 right now, and they're balling out home and away. And they got this team chemistry that they play with. It's weird. You know, the energy's buzzing in the building every time they play. They're out there having fun. And they're probably the most fun team in basketball to watch right now. But are they that team who's going to, rise to the top and win a championship right now? I don't know. I can't answer that. I don't want to put an answer on that because it could go either way, honestly. It could go either way. It's basketball. But they're definitely a team that's opening some eyes right now, and they're going to be up there when playoffs come rolling around.
I kind of side with I feel like they're more of a good story this year than a great team. If I've learned anything from the past decade of basketball watching LeBron is I feel like a lot of superstars kind of put it in neutral and they coast up until where it gets to the playoffs, and then it's everybody's all hands on deck. But man, are they really fun to watch like during the regular season. I still think they are missing maybe another superstar to kind of take some of that burden off, I think they just aren't going to compete with other teams like the Nets, the Sixers, even Golden State just teams that have more superstars, more firepower, that they can turn it on more when they really need to. But during the regular season, like, I don't know if you can name me a more exciting, more fun team to watch every night. Night in, night out, Ja's putting up that one full court pass where he was falling out of bounds and catches the ball and just throws up. He dunks on people. He's putting up half court shots, just like he did last night with like 1 second left on the shot clock, and he's throwing it. There's just not a more exciting and fun team to watch. So I'll be interested to see what they can do, but I'll side more on they're a good team or a good story rather than a good team.
I think I'm going to go the opposite way. I think the Grizzlies have a legit shot this year. They're 45-22. They're second in the Western Conference, 8 games behind the Sun, a half game up on the Warriors in the 3 seed. And I'll tell you why. We've seen over the last 2 years, one of them was a bubble season. You could take it with a grain of salt. I'm already on record saying I think the bubble was a harder place to play than a regular NBA arena. I stand by that. But think of the Miami Heat who went and played the Lakers in the finals in 2020. They're a team with no true superstars. Yeah, you can say Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo are superstar-esque players, but they're not quite at that tier. They went to the finals. We think last year, who played against the Bucks? It was in the Western Conference, the Phoenix Suns, who don't have a true superstar. Devin Booker, a superstar scorer, but maybe not a superstar player. He's a top 20 guy. I don't know if he's a top 10 guy. Chris Paul at this stage in his career, I'd probably say is around the same boat. If those two teams can get to the finals, I'm not saying the Grizzlies are going to win the championship this year, even that they'll even get there. But we've seen the last 2 years a team with no true superstar that's going to be ball dominant and really take over the game. They're playing good fundamental team basketball. Those teams are able to blow past these other teams when the superstars don't show up in these series and have the ability to get to the finals. And neither of them have closed it out, but they've both been really entertaining and fun series. And I think that the lesson in all of that is that you don't need the superstar in the way that you used to maybe in the NBA. These teams have gotten so much better and so much deeper. You think of the Nets before Kevin Durant got there, this is probably the trajectory they were going to if they let these guys continue to grow together. When these guys play together and they're really in it and they're all homegrown together the way that the Grizzlies are, they play for each other, they play harder, they play tougher minutes, they're more bound to hustle, die for the loose ball. It really just feels like the team gels better together when they're organically put together. Think of the Warriors back when they won those 73 games. That was an organically put together roster, and they were absolutely incredible. They were fun to watch. They didn't really, obviously Steph Curry emerged as a superstar, maybe the same way Ja Morant is doing this year. But that team was an organically homegrown, put together team, just like this Grizzlies team is. And I have a couple of numbers that I want to go over with this Grizzlies squad. So in the last 5 minutes of the game within 5 points, the NBA titles these clutch minutes. So the last 5 minutes of the game where the score is within 5 points. The Grizzlies are 18-9 in those games with the fourth ranked offense, 10th ranked defense, and 6th best net rating of 11.2. So they're a very good late game team when the game is on the line. That Ja Morant has also shot the third most free throws in those minutes behind Luka Doncic and Nikola Jokic. So he's obviously getting to the line a lot, leading to a lot of easy buckets. Last year, the Grizzlies were the youngest team in a decade to make the playoffs. Their average age was 24.2. This year, their average age is 23.9. So they got even younger, and they've already won more games this year than they did last year. And also, and I think this is kind of a little bit of a side note, but they're kind of the opposite of what the Lakers are, right? The Lakers are a team that we've been talking about all year. Like, oh, they'll put it together at the last minute. They're a bunch of old veterans. They've been there before. This is a team that's never been there before. They're a bunch of young, hungry dudes that just want to go out there, get buckets. They just want to ball, and they're doing it. Like, they play with heart. They play with fire. They play with intensity, and they're damn good. Ja Morant might be one of the 10 best players in the league at this point with the way he's...
You can't sit here and say Devin Booker's not a top
come
10
on,
player.
dude.
Ja is right
Look
now.
at what
He's having
Ja's
a crazy
doing,
season,
man.
yeah, but you can't live short term right now, dude.
That's fine. If we can say they're about equal, but I mean, Ja Morant, fringe top 10 player in his second year. The
Agreed.
guy's
He's
averaging
insane.
he's averaging 27.6, 5.8, 6.6 on 49% shooting, and like Christian said, walking highlight.
He's
reel,
like a
dude.
baby D Rose in my opinion.
Baby D Rose, the perfect analogy. It's Russell Westbrook and Kyrie Irving in one player.
Have you guys seen the comparisons to him to Allen Iverson?
I've seen a lot.
I
I've
have.
seen
Yeah.
him
That would
compared
be
to
very
every
interesting
single
to
man.
see.
So
that.
they like almost like the way Kobe mirrors MJ at times. It's almost like a similar mirror of Allen Iverson
Oh, so it's
mirroring.
like video clips.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Nice.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
wanna
could
see
see
that.
it. They're both short dudes with bounce. They're both wiry athletes. He's been compared to everybody, and I
Yeah.
think for good reason. He
Yeah,
has so
definitely. He's a
so
baller.
many different things he does well. The finishing, the acrobatics in the air, the handle, the vision.
How he
the
handles-
shooting is improving vastly. He's through almost 35% from the three this year, making over one bucket a night. He's just such an incredible player. I think if they don't take that step this year, I think it's definitely coming, and I think they're definitely going to be adding a superstar soon. Who's not going to want to play with Ja Morant? I think he's your favorite player's favorite player kind of a deal. Somebody's going to want to go there and play with that guy. Think
Yeah.
of Kawhi Leonard, think of Paul George. Both their contracts are potentially up at the end of the year if they opt out.
Don't say that.
Something to keep your eye on.
But another thing that's really impressive about Ja is, how he handles all the off the court kind of bullshit. He's very mature in handling the way he handles the media, how he handles all the people talking about him, how he's handled fame thus far. He's always kind of kept that chip on his shoulder, underdog mentality that he came out of Murray State with, and I don't see that going anywhere anytime soon. I think he's a dog. He's got that dog in him, and he's gonna stay Ja for a while. Anything to say to that, Christian?
I think the last thing we'll say is, who would have thought 2 years ago when Zion was drafted first overall that would have been the wrong pick, and that this kid from Murray State, a mid-major school, 2 years in college, just a wiry little point guard, was going to be the guy who should have went number one overall in the draft and is potentially going to be the next big superstar at the one in
Now
the
he's
NBA.
putting his damn arm in the rim every night.
It's awesome, dude. I want to give a quick shout out to my boy Uzi. Second game of the college basketball season, the year Ja Morant got drafted. He looked at me, told me this kid's going to be special. He's going to go in the top 5 of the draft. Look out for him. I got to give a shout out. I've never heard a guy call a guy that was going to be this good that early. Definitely impressive for him, and it's definitely been fun to watch the evolution of Ja Morant through these couple of years.
Shout out Uzi.
So as we mentioned a little while ago, Aaron Rodgers is returning to Green Bay to be the Packers starting quarterback. The details of the contract have been announced by NFL Network, but Pat McAfee is very adamant that his report is correct and the deal hasn't been signed. Aaron Rodgers also came out and says that he hasn't signed a deal yet, so we don't know for how long or what the ramifications cap-wise are going to be for the Packers, but we do know that Aaron Rodgers is returning and Devontae Adams has signed the franchise tag, so he'll come back and make $20 million in a one-year contract next year. But Green Bay got the boys back together.
Yeah.
It's It feels like something we kind of all saw coming. Me and you both predicted he would stay last week when we talked about this, but still, we gotta at least talk about it a little bit. Definitely felt like a foregone conclusion, but it is nice to see that this kind of drama is finally over. Hopefully, at the end of this time, whatever it is, if it's a 3-year contract, 2-year contract at the end is either a retirement, he makes a decision quickly, and we don't have to deal with all of this bullshit again because it was exhausting to deal with. I wish he would have just came out and tweeted that he was staying 2 months ago, so we wouldn't have had to deal with all of this.
If he doesn't have a Super Bowl in that time, I don't think anyone's going to give a crap on what he wants to do at the end of the new contract. But yeah, maybe see him take a lower deal so he can bring more of his friends back and have a good old time in Green Bay. Best chance of winning is still in Green Bay rather than going somewhere else. So, smart move. Drama-filled for sure. It was a saga, but it's over, and what we thought was going to happen happened. Look to see the Packers be the Packers.
As a Bears fan, I was kind of hoping you would leave, so we stop crying after twice a year when they beat us into the ground. But realistically, yeah. Realistically,
awesome.
though, it just seemed like the most logical way it was going to end because, I mean, the Packers, although the ownership might be a pain in the ass in Aaron Rodgers' perspective.
The front office, you mean?
Yeah. Their team is just rock solid, top to bottom. I don't know even if you went to Denver or if there was another spot that he could have landed that would have gotten him a better roster. They're just so talented all over the field. It just felt like there would have been more damage than real anything good to come of it if he were to switch teams. I mean, if he's chasing Super Bowls, which it's all about legacy at this point for him, probably the Packers is where I would want to be.
Yeah, that's what Brandon and I both said last week, is the only move he's going to make at this point is a legacy move, somewhere he thinks that he's going to go and have a better chance at winning a Super Bowl. And if you leave a team that goes 13-3, 13-3, and 13-4 in back-to-back years, and you claim that you're leaving because you think you're going to be more successful somewhere else, you're full of shit.
Yeah.
There was no situation, even the Denver Broncos, where he was going to find a better supporting cast than this one. The issue has always been the cap, and if they're able to navigate that, the Packers are going to be great again this year. They're going to have their back-to-back MVP quarterback back. They're going to have probably the best wide receiver in the NFL at this point in Devontae Adams back. Who knows who else they add or bring in. If Rodgers takes a team-friendly contract, that's certainly going to make things a lot easier and let him keep all those guys there. But the Packers are obviously going to win the NFC Central or the NFC North next year. They're going to be probably playing in the NFC Championship game. You look at the landscape of the NFC, and it's wide open. There's no reason to think that the Packers aren't going to be a Super Bowl contender next year. I'd argue their chances are probably better this year than before, with Russ being out of the NFC and one less guy to possibly deal with.
Yeah, I agree. I think, anytime you get in the playoffs, it's going to be tough. I don't think I'm going to grant them a free trip to the Super Bowl just yet.
I'm not saying that, but they're going to be one of the teams
they're
we talk about.
They're going to be the team we talk about the whole season. You're right. We kind of said it all last week. What happened is what we expected to happen. Another thing to cap on this, I forget who the player was, but the last time the Green Bay Packers put a tag on somebody, they won the Super Bowl.
Hey,
there's
way back when.
There's something there. So, way back when. You're right.
I'll go ahead and tie a bow on this one, Christian, unless you got something to say. The last thing I want to say is the Packers have had 30 years of Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers and have won 2 Super Bowls to show for it. I think they need to win one in these next couple of years.
They have to do it.
I think it's going to be hard to look back at this time in history, in Packers history, which should be the greatest era of the franchise's history, and not be at least a little bit jaded towards the quarterback play if you don't get a little bit more success at the top level. I mean, 2 in 30 years of Hall of Fame quarterback play. Yeah. It's hard to stomach that.
They even had Bart Starr before Brett Favre came in, like a little bit before that, but 3 quarterbacks, and the Bears we just want one, Please, God, give me one.
I saw a TikTok of this 91-year-old gentleman. He's a lifelong Bears fan, and his daughter or somebody told him Aaron Rodgers just re-signed with the Packers, and he said, "Shit." And that was it. It was awesome. We're going to go ahead and pivot to something that's a little bit less fun. Calvin Ridley has been hit with a full season suspension for betting on games. It is alleged that he placed 3 parlays between November 23rd and November 28th of last season, all on NFL games. And all 3 of those parlays, he did select the Falcons to win. So he wasn't betting against his own team, but nevertheless, something that you're not allowed to do. A stupid mistake. And Brandon, I got to say, he is the worst gambler of all time, turning a $1,500 gamble into an $11 million loss.
Yeah.
Suspended for a year without pay, he sacrifices the 5th-year option on his contract, which was worth $11 million. He's only earned $10 million so far in his entire career. So he was going to double his net worth in one season. He will now no longer be able to do that. And it is tragic. And I really do feel bad for him. He was away from the team for mental health issues this last season. I truly hope that he's gotten the help that he needs and that he's in a better place. And this just has to be a gut punch for a guy who really seemed like he needed a win. It's tough, but at the end of the day, there are rules, there's consequences for your actions, and this is the price that you got to pay for what you did.
Yeah, I want to know if those parlays hit.
I hope they did.
Yeah, for his sake, come on, give him the win. I think I could go on and on about the suspension and the hypocrisy surrounding the NFL and how they deal with players who do break rules. I think we've seen a long string of violence in the NFL, specifically domestic violence in the NFL, that players, it seems like they're getting a slap in the wrist, 2 games off, 2-week vacation, come back and play on the field. And then, but if you do something that is against the NFL firsthand, then you're out for the whole season and you're basically ridiculed. I don't, for one, agree with it. I also don't agree with any NFL or any Major League sports player gambling on the sport, because if even if it was him betting for the Falcons to win and it was all in good spirit, if we allow that, what windows does it open up
exactly
for the rest of it? So I kind of have mixed emotions on it. I don't think the dude deserves the full season no pay. It's not that big a deal. There's far bigger deals that bigger situations that have happened in the NFL that I think people just kind of let it go over their heads. But it's not my decision.
Yeah. So a couple thoughts that I had that you kind of made me think of or rethink of when I first saw the news. Man, does it feel? It just feels like a really hefty punishment for something that probably was pretty innocent, and it was something that, because gambling nowadays is so easy, it's so convenient, it's so, you don't have to have a bookie, you just have to have an online account in some states, it's so easy. And if you're dealing with mental health stuff and you're just sitting at home and you have some friends over and everyone else is doing it, it can be so innocent where you just kind of just had a brain fart and you just did something and you didn't think about it. Maybe, who knows, maybe he was partying with some friends and maybe he was a little bit intoxicated and just who knows, but it feels to me so innocent. And also thinking of how they punish other players for things that I would deem more egregious, like domestic violence issues. Players still get a slap on the wrist, maybe a 6-game suspension, and then they're back to playing and earning money. But I was also trying to look at it from a different perspective. The NFL is a gargantuan of a business, and they get most of their money from their TV deals, from commercials, advertising. That's really where they make most of their money. I think within the next decade, sports betting will be so intertwined with the NFL that will overtake the biggest bang that the NFL gets. It'll take over advertising. It'll take over their TV deals. So I feel like the NFL, knowing that, they have to be so strict with their policy, because you start questioning the bottom principle of, are we really trying to win? Are players throwing the game? And my God, they might have some real issues. So I feel like more than anything, Calvin Ridley they're just laying down the law and saying, hey, like if you guys, he's the example. And they're really laying down the law, like, hey, to all the other companies that are invested into the NFL, them as a business, like, hey, we're not tolerating this. If you do gamble, like, you're going to get suspended the whole year, no pay. So
I think the I think you guys both hit it on the head. But at the end of the day, the NFL has a responsibility to itself to protect the integrity of the league. And I think it's ridiculous, just as much as you guys do, that guys like Ray Rice can get a 2-game suspension for what he did. You can look back at all the domestic violence issues. Think back to Kareem Hunt, and I think he got 6 games. Ezekiel Elliott had an issue. I believe he got 6 games as well. And to go and to look at it in a vacuum and say sports gambling versus domestic violence, one is a 17-game suspension, one is a 6-game suspension, or even a 2-game suspension in the first case.
It's a bad
look. And it's easy to look at that and think like, oh, it's a false equivalency at the end of the day. And I think it's not as weird as it is to say it's not fair to the NFL. The NFL has a responsibility to the people who own the franchises, to the fans, to the people that invest money through advertisements and things like that. The people that pay them, they have to protect the integrity of the game. And if you do something that potentially damages the shield of the NFL, they're going to come at you with everything they have. They're going to throw the phone book at you, the Holy Bible, the Word of God, whatever ability they have to strike you down, they will do that. And it's for the better of the game, no matter how unfair it looks or how unfair it feels. They had to do this because now every single time for the rest of Calvin Ridley's career, fair or not, if he finishes short of the sticks and it looks like he could have reached that ball over, somebody's going to think in the back of their mind, he must have taken the under on his yards or something like that. And that's the problem, is because when you open that can of worms, it's impossible to put them back in. And if the NFL has an integrity problem, they're going to lose everything. And the owners, the commissioner, the players, the fans, none of us can have that.
Yeah, I agree there.
Almost immediately, too, I don't know if you guys noticed or went to Twitter when all this was going on, people were clowning on Ridley. I mean, they should, having fun at him. But then, like, as the day went on, you started seeing people bring video clips together of Ridley where, like, he'll catch the ball and then he'll go back 10 yards, like, to try to avoid the defenders. And like, oh, you know, and then like slowly as the day went on further, they went and started questioning other players too. And it's like, that's where the issue is right there. Like, even though they put their foot down, like, and they put their foot down hard, even still, like, you're going to have people start to question. Also think it's worth noting too, the suspension it said at least 17 games.
Yep.
At least.
Yeah,
so it's not definitive of how many games he's going to miss. It's just at least the season. So maybe he gets perma-banned. Who knows? You know, but I think like this is them setting an example of like, hey, if you're going to start messing with the integrity, like we gotta like cut that out.
Yeah, if there's one thing that professional sports organizations are going to take seriously, it's insider gambling. We saw what the MLB did with Pete Rose. He's banned for life from baseball. He'll probably never get into the Hall of Fame while he's still alive because of it. And now Calvin Ridley gets a 17-game suspension for $1,500 worth of wagers in games that he wasn't playing in, where he bet on the team that pays him to win. It's a bad look for the NFL, but at the end of the day, it's hard to not understand where they're coming from. I think what we all can say for certain is that we wish Calvin Ridley the best going forward. I hope that he has gotten the help he needs and is on the path to getting better. And if he isn't quite there yet, I hope very soon that he is on the right track. We're all rooting for you, Calvin. We hope you're doing better. And we look forward to seeing you hopefully in the 2023 football season. Yeah. We're going to go ahead and pivot to our last topic of the day. We got to talk a little bit more about the NBA, and the Brooklyn Nets are a bit of a weird situation. Kyrie Irving's been a part-time player for all of the year. James Harden and him apparently absolutely hated each other. So they ship James Harden out. They get Ben Simmons back, who's a whole nother can of worms in an interesting situation that I'm sure we'll dive into when he's closer to making his debut. He's going to be on the court when they visit Philly in a couple of days.
Stressful.
That's going to be interesting to watch. Certainly something I'm going to be keeping my eye on. I'm definitely going to have that game on. And then obviously they have Kevin Durant, who's missed a lot of time with injuries. And right now they're trailing a little bit in the standings. As I pull the standings up in front of me, they're currently sitting at the 8th seed at 33-33, a perfect 500. And the question I want to pose to you guys is, are these Nets really a 500 team? Are they better than the sum of their parts that they've been so far? Are the superstars going to pull them up by their laurels and take them through the championship, through the playoffs, things like that? Or is it not going to be enough? Is Kyrie Irving as a part-time player not going to be enough? Is Kevin Durant hobbled not going to be enough? And I'm curious to think what you guys think, because like you said with the Grizzlies situation, I'm really not sure what to think of this team going forward.
Yeah, it's hard to say. If you look at their roster, if you look at a picture of their roster, you say that team's going to win an NBA championship. If you look at their stats on paper, if you look at who they are, on paper, you're wondering if they're even going to make the playoffs. So it's hard to say. We don't know who Brooklyn is as a whole right now. They haven't got all their guys on the floor, and they are dealing with hiccups. I don't think midseason drama is the best thing to have when you're on the hunt for a championship, but at the end of the day, you have one of the, if not the best player in basketball on your team in Kevin Durant.
One of the best, if not the best, in history.
Yeah,
I think it's
in
a fair
sure.
statement.
No doubt.
Kevin Durant is one of the all-time greats.
100%.
Having him as a weapon.
Yeah, exactly. So anytime you have him, you look for them to make an impact, especially down the stretch in the playoffs. But it's really going to be interesting to see how it all falls apart. Like you said, they're at an even 500 right now, and that's not where I don't think any of you guys thought that's where they'd be at this point in the season.
Certainly not.
I sure as hell didn't. So it'll be interesting to see. I can't really say much else than that. I really don't know who they are either.
Kind of like what I mentioned earlier. It kind of feels like the Nets are like the standard when I was talking about just like kind of coasting until you can just make the playoffs and then let's go balls to the wall. I think with Kyrie, KD, and Harden, didn't they have like a combined, like they only played all three together like less than 10 games
I
or
think
something
it was
like
like
that?
13 or something stupid low over the course of 2 seasons.
So if you just, now that Harden's gone, they haven't played with Ben Simmons yet, so that is a complete wild card. Maybe it doesn't work out at all, but even if it doesn't, like they've been playing without him anyways. As long as you can get KD and Kyrie both healthy, both playing together, they're just both amazing players. But then like Simmons is the ultimate wild card. Maybe he is a perfect piece that complements both of them. We just saw, I think it was last night that Kyrie put up 50 and it was under 20 shooting attempts. So it just points to like sometimes because with Kyrie, with his issues, his off the court issues of the vaccine and the policies in Brooklyn, I at least have kind of forgotten how great Kyrie is. Like he's a great player, great talent. And then no one forgets about how good KD is. So how terrible would that matchup be if you're the number 1 seed and then you have to possibly play the Nets as your first? That wouldn't be something I would want,
Yeah, they're certainly going to be a matchup nightmare for whoever finishes in the 1 seed in the East. Kyrie Irving's my favorite basketball player of all time. I just want to go ahead and throw a disclosure out there. When I was rooting for Cleveland before LeBron came back, Kyrie Irving was the only reason to watch Cleveland basketball for a couple of years. The handle is absolutely incredible. He can shoot it from anywhere. The acrobatic finishes are so fun. I've never had more fun watching a basketball player than watching Kyrie Irving. So it's hard for me to not say that he's going to be able to turn it on in the playoffs. I think that policy where they're talking about where he has to be a part-time player because of the vaccine, there's a lot of talk that that's going to be lifted in time for the playoffs. So hopefully the Nets get him back as a full-time player and he's able to play home games in the playoffs. It's a totally ridiculous thing, politics of the vaccine aside, that he can't play in his home arena, but visiting players who are unvaccinated can come in there and play. It's just a ridiculous thing. Just let him play regardless of what you think of all of the stuff that he's said and done or what you think of the vaccine personally. For them to say the visiting players can come in and play and he can as a home player is just ridiculous. But moving on from that, like Kyrie, watching him play against Golden State in the 2016 finals when he hit that big shot to win the championship for Cleveland, he's that caliber player every single night. Probably one of the 3 most clutch players in NBA history. If you go look at the stats, every single metric will back that up. Kevin Durant, I look back and think about the Bucks series that they played last year, the Nets and the Bucks, and how dominant he was all series long, and the Bucks ended up coming out on top, but Kevin Durant was dropping 45, 50-point performances every single night. If you put those two guys in the court together, it's just like putting LeBron and Kyrie together. Like, they were such an unstoppable duo. I have a hard time thinking when playoff time comes and the game gets slower and it gets more physical and skill is more prominent and more emphasized, that this team isn't going to be able to come out on top against just about anybody that they play. The only teams that are going to stop them are going to be the big boys, teams like the Bucks, teams like the Suns, teams like the Warriors. I don't see one of those team like the Sixers. That would be a hell of an interesting series. I think the Nets actually got a lot better from that trade. You think about adding a guy like Seth Curry in there with those guys.
They might have won the trade, actually.
I certainly feel like they did. Harden's been traded 3 times in 2 years. It's hard to not talk about something like that. But just at the core of it, I would probably lean that they're true contenders more so than what they are at 33-33, but that's just based off of what I've seen in the past from these guys. Now, if Kevin Durant is hobbled and he's not 100% healthy in the playoffs, it changes everything.
Yeah.
If Kyrie can't play, it changes everything. But those guys are just so good separately, and you put them together on the same floor. Whatever Ben Simmons brings is just going to be added on to those guys. They are the best, I think, big, if you can call Kevin Durant a big, the best big and guard combination that we've seen in a really, really long time.
So to put both of you guys' feet to the fire, do you guys feel like they're more of a, I feel like you kind of just answered it, more of a contender, or do you think they're more of a team that's probably going to get bounced if they make the playoffs?
I'll definitely say contender.
Yeah.
Contender.
Any team that Kevin Durant's on, I'm not going to say they're just going to get bounced. Yeah.
I still have a hard time seeing them getting all the way to the finals, but I feel like they're
a dogfight.
Yeah, I feel like they're at least getting out of the first round.
Yeah, I just don't know who in the East outside of the Bucks. I'll go ahead and pull the standings up really quick, and then we'll go ahead and wrap the show up right after this because we're running a little bit short on time. But if we look at the Eastern Conference standings right now, we got the Heat in the 1 seed, the Sixers in the 2, Bucks 3, Bulls 4, Celtics 5, Cavs 6, Raptors 7, Nets 8. How many teams in a 7-game series at full strength do we think can hang with the Nets?
Bucks.
The Bucks.
And
That's
the
it.
I
I don't think I have to see more of Embiid and Harden together. I love that pairing. I think the skill sets complement each other well, but Kyrie and Kevin Durant over Harden and Joel. Plus, you add in the fact that they got Ben Simmons in too. They got the Sixers' best shooter back in that trade. I don't know. I have a hard time believing anything can happen in a 7-game series. Crazier shits happen for sure. But if you got my feet to the fire, gun to my head, I think I gotta go with the
Give
Nets
me
in that situation.
Iguodala.
Rest in peace to Max Kellerman on First Take, man. That guy was an absolute legend. Well, I think we've exhausted everything from a very busy couple of days in sports. Yeah. Really, a lot of the stuff we talked about is super, super fresh. Can't thank you guys enough for coming over. Can't wait you guys enough for letting us into your home and listening to us crazy idiots for an hour tonight. We appreciate you guys, and we will see you next week.
See you.
See you.